well account for lots of your support functions, support calls. I mentioned to you guys earlier in the week that lots of your support calls that you're going to be doing on a regular basis are going to be involved with display functions and printer devices supporting printer type of functionality. Okay. And you will also find that lots of those support functions that you guys are going to be doing are the result of self-inflicted wounds. I remember years ago, I was working with a company, and we were at the consulting gig that I was on at that point in time was in one of the large IBM offices downtown Atlanta, in an area called Wildwood, big complex. And I was managing basically a frontline support crew that supported, I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of individual mid-level managers and their administrative assistants and so on. I was amazed and amused to find that they would call up the help desk to have somebody come and load paper into their printers. They would call up the help desk and have someone come and change the ink in their printers. So I was I was a little bit set back by that. So I proposed that we put together a training session for the administrative assistants and even the mid-level managers themselves to teach them how to do these very simple things. You know, take paper, put it in the tray, boom, you're ready to go. But no, they pushed back. You wouldn't believe how hard they fought that stuff. And still, from the time, even up to the time I left that consulting gig, they were still filling out help desk tickets to have somebody come and load their printer back up with paper. So, in addition to those kind of things, excuse me, you will find that people will do things on their printers that, like I say, are self-inflicted wounds. They will go in and mess with the configuration of the printers. They will do things such as, you know, their printers, where the printers are located, they'll stack up boxes and things around the outside of the printer devices, and even some of them right up next to them, and they'll close up the venting systems so the printers will overheat, malfunction, that kind of thing. So when you are initially setting up, and you guys you'll be initially installing, setting up, configuring, unpacking the systems, wiring them up, hooking them up, configuring those to communicate either over network connections or directly connected to an individual computer system. You have to consider several things, is the location being just one of those. You want it to be in a location that's easy to get to. You don't want to have anything stacked up around it that's going to impede access to the system, or access to any of the venting systems, or access to the trays where you load the paper in, access to the trays where the printed items are ejected out into the environment there. So and you have to understand too, one very important thing about printers is that it's just another computing type of appliance. It's an endpoint. Most of your modern printers nowadays run some scaled down version of an onboard operating system code. Most of them have a scaled down version of a motherboard. Some of them even have enhanced, extended memory capabilities. They many of them, especially your large, your large laser type printers, the color laser printers that we're seeing very common nowadays. Those things are oftentimes set up as a network available printer, and then many people share that printer from multiple locations throughout the enterprise network. The printer, the connectivity on these things, a number of ways. You'll find that most of them have a USB direct connect port, and typically on the desktop printers anyway, they will have a USB-B type plug that goes into the back of the printer. And then, of course, the USB-A cable goes into a hub or a laptop or a desktop system that drives it specifically. You'll also find that most of the printers now, even the very inexpensive desktop inkjet printers, have a NIC, a network interface card built into it. Many of them communicate either wired or wirelessly or both. So they have their own MAC address. It's a configurable device on the network. It will also receive, when it powers up as part of a larger network, an IP address. Lots of these things now are capable of communicating with their host computer system or the host network with Wi-Fi communications. They may be an endpoint on a wireless access point configuration. It may be a configuration directly using some type of a serial connectivity to a specific printer port or a COM port on the computer itself, or a USB connectivity as well. You go into the printer specifications there to set up functions of the printer and define all those characteristics. You can make it a shared appliance if you wish, share the device across basically anybody on the network can print to it. And they, in essence, have to map it to their computer systems in order to print to it. You can do quite a bit of configuration management on the either the software that comes along with the printer to set up. And many of the systems like this image here, have an onboard menu that you can use for multiple configuration functions as well. Networking functions, the configuration as far as how it gets and its IP address. Is it a static IP address? Is it a dynamically assigned IP address? The same as other host machines on the network as well. There are usually almost all your printers will come along with some type of software that I use to actually do the settings and the configuration. It's an applet that it usually comes from the same manufacturer of the printer device itself. When you first plug it up, the Windows anyway is sort of an auto configurable kind of thing. Windows will even load up by default a generic type of device driver for just about every printer that's on the market nowadays. Now, I've always been a fan of downloading the specific brands' device drivers from their websites. That way, I'm assured that I get all of the detailed functionality that is assigned for that particular printer. Okay. But you don't have to. I mean, Windows and environment and Mac OS, by the same token, sometimes it does this as well. When you just plug the device up, the computer recognizes it. It will, categorize it into a certain type of a print device. And like I say, for the most part, it may choose a generic device driver, which will immediately bring it up and make it available to start printing to. Again, I prefer to get the specific brand and manufacturer's device drivers. Also on the onboard menu window, it can assist you in getting it hooked up to a Wi-Fi network if you wish to do it that way. It will show you what its assigned IP address is, or you can go in most of them and manually configure the IP address, static IP address configuration there as well. Like I say, my preference is to go to the manufacturer or whomever the manufacturer of the device might happen to be and download, typically over the internet, their device drivers. This function that they call plug and play, universal plug and play, is what Windows uses to actually select the generic driver to make it actually fire up and work. Now, all of your printers, they use what's referred to as a PDL, a page description language, that actually what it does is it takes a printed image from whatever application program you're using, Word, Excel, a paint program, anything like that, and it formats that by way of this PDL so that it gives you this concept. And you guys have certainly heard the term in the past, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. This page description or printer definition language takes the image from your computer system and formats it in such a way that what you see on the printed page is exactly what you see on the screen or within whatever application you use. Now, in the past, many of these computers or printer systems, regardless of the manufacturer, utilized a page description language referred to as PostScript. And it was, it was the formatting language there. The thing that we find now with your modernized page control or page description languages is that they typically now will incorporate what's referred to as vector graphics generation, meaning that, if you take an image, for instance, and enlarge it by a certain degree, that it will still maintain that crisp look and feel to the image and the text and whatever. Now you can go beyond the ability of the vector graphics engine to accommodate that. Then it starts getting a little fuzzy and pixelated looking. Most of your printers now utilize this concept called CMYK as far as the color functions there. It's actually 4 different colors: the solid black, magenta, yellow, and cyan colors. Some of your older printers utilize, I know my wife has a Canon printer down in her office downstairs. It uses actually 6 different print cartridges. The ones that I have actually uses 2. It's got the black cartridge and then the color cartridge, which has the cyan, magenta, and yellow all in the same cartridge there. I tell you, these new desktop printers, the resolution on these things is unbelievable. The inkjet printers. I use the one that I've got here. It's very inexpensive to, it's photograph capable print. Some of them we see are even up to 1,200 dots per inch as far as the resolution, and some of them even higher than that. But the printers are very inexpensive nowadays. But boy, do they sock it to you when you buy ink. So you can get the printers just about as giveaway types of prices. And you think you're doing great right up until the time you have to, or you choose to buy new ink cartridges there. So they are really going overboard with that colored water, is what it is in essence. But according to how much you use the printer, the functions you use it for, it may very well be worth it. The printer themselves, they have a properties panel. Excuse me, my sinuses went crazy here today. They have a properties panel where you go in and you set up all of the properties and the attributes that define how the printer is going to operate. You, of course, can set up, if you have a multi-tray printer where you have multiple input tray feeds for different size paper. Even in some cases, you have the multiple output. Some printers are baked into the device itself is the ability to do real-time duplex printing on both sides of the page. My wife's is like that. Mine will do it, but I have to print one side, take the paper, turn it over, put it back in the deck, and then print the other side. So mine's more manually oriented. I've got my eyes on a couple of these new line of color laser printers. The pricing on those has come down significantly, especially over the last 5-10 years. But you go into the properties panel and you set up all of the definitions and the attributes of how the printer is going to work. Logging, set up all the default printing functions and so on. And like I said, you can either choose to accept the generic device driver that Windows selects for you, or my preferences would be to download the specific device driver for the particular printer device and load that on as well. Now, this is what I was talking about as far as the different things that you can manipulate with the printer properties panel. You can even set up security functionality on the printer. You can set it where you want to make it a shared network shared type of device. Um, when you go into the printers and scanners function, or printers and devices on some of the newer versions of Windows, it says, it will show you a listing of all of your printer devices that Windows already knows about. And if you add anything new, it will show up, those will show up on your printers and scanners panel as well. You get to this guy through your Windows settings menu or by way of your computer manager, or I do it through the control panel, on the Windows environment. I'm old school kind of guy. But either way, you get to the printers and scanners property panel, and this is where you define, the detail characteristics of the individual device itself. You can also go in here, and this is where you would select the sharing tag up here or tab, go in and set up security, okay? Attach the printer to some very specific communication ports here. And then there's other configuration items that I can go through here. And on this page as well, I can choose to update my device driver, search for firmware updates, things like that. But it's all this applet-driven kind of management functionality here. You select printers and you configure printers in an enterprise environment based upon the required output. You know, if you are going to be printing, publishable information, very high resolution graphics, well, it may make sense for you to purchase or recommend a very high resolution laser type of printers, very high speed, very high resolution, excellent photographic quality capability there. According to how the printer is going to be used as well. I mean, I've seen like my desktop printers I have here. It's a scanner. It's the all-in-one device. The scanner, the copier, the printer device. Doesn't do duplex printing. Well, it does, but I have to manually intervene, like I was saying. Got an excellent scanner. The scanner will scan up to, I believe it's 600 DPI. May go higher than that, but I think that's the high end. It does print photo quality images here. Like I say, very inexpensive, rapid printing capability there. I have it shared as a network printer, and I can print to it from any device in the home by way of the wireless access point, and I also have a hardwired connection from my laptop directly to the printer. So either way, I can get to it. Of course, the printer, you have the capability at print time of updating some of the characteristics, selecting paper sizes, paper tray you want to feed from if it has multiple trays, copies, number of copies I want to print on it. The resolution, print resolution, I might just want to print like a dot oriented draft copy before I actually waste color ink, things like that. So I've got, and the options that you have here are all based upon the type of printer you have and the software that comes along with it automatically. So I have quite a bit of leeway there as far as configuring individual print jobs as they go out. I like I say, I can print different size paper, portrait, landscape mode, multiple copies, direct it, and instead of printing a physical copy, I can print it out to a PDF document if I wish. And also on these all-in-one functions here, the scanner functionality mine has, and most of them do, have some type of OCR software, optical character recognition software, where, for instance, I can scan a newspaper article or a magazine article or something out of a book and have it turn it into an editable document that I can edit in like Word. And all of the new printers have that same kind of functionality there. Most of the time, printers that are shared across network connections, they call them public printing, they don't have a lot of physical access to the system. It may be isolated somewhere. Only certain people have physical access to it. And even a further limited number of people have access to changing the attributes and properties the way the printer is actually set up. Sometimes printers are, again, especially like your high speed laser printers, network oriented printers are sometimes isolated in a particular area of the business. They are shared by multiple users across the network. Users get, their print jobs just get queued up, and it's first come, first served by default. Now, whomever happens to be managing that print queue, of course, they can change priorities and, move one job in front of another, that kind of thing. But those controls typically are not made available to more than at least a couple of people that are declared to manage those printers and the print jobs coming off of it there. Like I say, I was talking about sharing a printer. One of the advanced options, or the tabs on the advanced options in the properties menu, is sharing. I designate a particular printer as a shared device. And I can do that through the software, or I can do that through, for instance, bringing up that print device in my File Explorer, right-clicking on that device and saying, I want to share this printer across the network environment. And then it makes it viewable to other users on the network. And then they have to, in essence, map that printer to their device. Once that mapping is done, after you say, yep, let's share the printer, then they can print directly to it from their workstation, wherever it happens to be on the network. You can do that, as I was saying, that sharing from why I'm wired into the same network environment, or a wireless connectivity as well. I've got my printer here and the wife's printer in her office shared across the network. We can print to it from mobile phones, tablet, phablet, desktop systems. There's the connect. If I see a printer listed in my network listing here, if I do a right click on that connect maps that to my workstation. So I have access to that printer to print to that particular print device, wherever it happens to be on the network. And it will show up, you'll notice down here under my network heading in my File Explorer here. Okay. Now that printer would have to have been shared by whomever owns that printer device, of course. But once they share it, then it shows up in everybody else's network display. And then it can be printed to from anywhere on the network there. There's a couple of things that I've seen used, and this is security type controls. Let's say we have a large high-speed laser printer, and it's shared by multiple departments or divisions inside of an organization, and one of those being HR. Well, I wouldn't want to be able to let HR print off reports and so on that contain some, secure information, salary information, deduction information, personally identifiable information, that kind of thing. So I can require on those print devices, in essence, multi-factor authentication to release the print jobs. So I can say, well, Mr. or Mrs. HR person, if you're going to print something to that printer, then you have to be standing next to that printer to release that print job, because you have to manually enter a PIN code, or you have to, swipe a card or something on the printer device itself so that it releases that print job. Then you gather it up and, keep it relatively secure. Now, just like any other endpoint on a computer system, the printers will generate a log, a system log function, and it keeps track of all the print jobs that were generated, where they came from, who owned those print jobs, the size of it, the type of information, and so on. Here is the optical character recognition I was talking about. Really cool software. It actually reads printed data and then turns it into an editable document. Okay. My scanner over here is a flatbed scanner, they call it. You open up the top, put the document face down, then it scans that. And then I can either have that printed immediately, copied there. I can have it turned into, for instance, a PDF document.
So I
I
have a
can,
question.
yes, go ahead.
So on the previous slide, it talks about the audit logs. My previous job had you had to put a PIN entry in to
Yep.
release the print job, and then they would keep track of how much each department would print,
Yep.
and they would use it as data for, future budgets and whatnot. So where do you find the audit logs, and can you convert them into charts and whatnot?
Okay, the answer to the second question is yes. It's just a file, and you can take that and convert it into like an Excel spreadsheet, a graph, a chart, whatever program that you use to convert those data. Yes. The audit log is typically stored on whatever computer system or server that is managing that particular printer. Now, some of the printers, especially the larger network printers themselves, the audit log is a file that's stored on board on the printer. So you have some software that allows you to attach to it and pull that audit log off of there. More often than not, the audit log is a system log that is stored as a file on whatever computer system is the controlling device for that printer. You'll have a print server machine, and usually that's where the individual printer audit logs is tracked as a file inside those machines. But it's just another file, and the format of that file is determinate. Some of them will go ahead and put it out in just your syslog format, basically a text string, date and time stamped, all that information. And some of it even puts it into a relational database, so that you got rows and columns of information that's easier to process as well. Yeah. So very good questions there, ma'am. I appreciate that. But it's all according to where the printer is being managed. If it's hardwired to a print server, that's more than likely where the print log is going to be. But like I say, in some cases, especially on the larger network-oriented printers, the log may be housed inside the storage on the printer itself. I've seen both of those situations there in different enterprise environments. Um, Networks, network scanners, network printing type of devices, according to the enterprise, is how they will actually put those endpoints together to do those things. We even see some networks, especially enterprise type networks, where their printing function may even be in a completely isolated environment. All the printing is done in the print shop, and then the printed reports, if they are physically printed, will be distributed out in some type of controlled environment, or they may be shared across individual computer systems in the network. We mentioned the server message block protocol earlier. Server message block is what allows me to share these types of print jobs, scanning services, those kind of things across network boundaries there. This is a graphic. This looks like my wife's printer. She has a Canon printer. It has the thing on the top, the tray on the top. It's also got a paper feed tray on the back side. And hers, the way it does duplex printing, it will well, I say the back side, but over here on this side, they got the paper feed tray over there. Um, it feeds the paper in, runs through the print job, and exits it out first into the top tray, which turns it over, and then it feeds it back in from there and does the duplex printing automatically. Now, her printer uses 6 ink cartridges, but this is the all-in-one type of device here. It does the scanning, it does the printing, it does the copying. Even some of them still have fax capability, even though we in North America anyway, you don't see fax used much more. But it's still capable of doing facsimile type of input and output. But the scanner is something you just configure it. You tell it what scan resolution you want to do. You tell it after you scan a document, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to print a copy of it? Do you want to scan it and create a PDF file? Do you want to send it as a network file? You decide what's happening with the scanned document or the printed document, either one. Okay. So the MFDs call them multifunctional devices. Most of your desktop-oriented personal kind of printers nowadays operate along those lines. It's the printer, it's the copier, it's the scanner, and even in some cases still it does faxing. Okay. Now, for the ones that still do the faxing capability, they will typically include also on the back side an RJ11 telephone plug where you plug in a landline phone number or phone cable and be able to use that for the facsimile functions. Now, there are basically in enterprise today three different types of printers that are still in use. I mean, there's many more than this according to the type of industry, but for most businesses, there's three types. There's laser printers. This is a sort of a side view, if you will, into a laser printer. You have this drum, they call it the imaging drum. That's usually metal. Okay. The imaging drum rotates very rapidly. You have the paper source. That's your input paper tray. Okay. The imaging drum here, and that's this guy over here. You have your paper source, and that's just a paper tray and stack. And there you typically will have some type of feed rollers that pull a sheet of paper into the printer. Okay. You have your computer interface, and that is hardwired or wireless or whatever, but it's used to take a formatted document that's formatted with the printer definition language, PDL, and it feeds that file to the printer. Okay. Then the laser here utilizes a it's a low res, low intensity red laser. And because of this drum rotating here, you have these, they call them corona wires, these charge rollers. They actually apply a positive charge to the surface of this metal drum. And then when it rolls on around, in this case, it'd be counterclockwise, the laser then, in essence, etches the inverse image of whatever formatted document that has been sent to the printer. It etches that image into that positive charge that's been applied to that metal surface. Now, it's not physically etching it into the drum, understand. It's just putting negative charge etchings, as it were, in that positive charge that these corona charge wires here applied to the surface of the drum. Okay. So the laser paints that. Then it rolls on around again in this counterclockwise motion. And this is where your toner cartridge or cartridges sit. Okay. They then apply the ink, color ink, black and white ink, whatever, to the image that is etched into the charge here on the drum by the laser. Okay. So it only puts the properly encoded ink right into that etched image on the drum. So the drum rolls on around, the paper is fed in, and these transfer rollers down here, they use pressure and heat to press that image onto the piece of paper that is on the bottom of that roller there as well. And then over here on this side is where your exit path is. So that after the page is printed, it exits out, and there's usually a brushing mechanism on the exit path that brushes off any errant particles of ink that didn't adhere to the image. And then the whole process starts all over again. Okay. And these things are high speed. They print sometimes hundreds of pages per minute. So it's constant. They generate a lot of heat, as you might imagine, but it is in essence a four-step process. The processing, documents encoded, sent to the printer, converted into the bitmap image that the laser then paints after the after the drum is charged. The laser then removes the negative charge, and that's where the printed image is etched into that positive charge or the negative charge. And then the toner sticks to it and it's pressed onto the page, and the whole process starts all over again. Okay. Now, a couple of things about laser printers you got to understand. The transfer, the fusing, and the cleaning. The cleaning is what I was talking about with, back up. is cleaning that has the brush where it any errant toner is brushed off when the page exits the exit path over here. Couple of things about laser printers. Because of that constant charge and discharge by the corona wires and the heat rollers there, it generates a lot of heat. This thing, after it runs, you run this thing for an hour, printing images for an hour. This metal drum, gets hot enough to fry an egg. You also have to be very cautious when you're cleaning this thing. You want to make certain that it is unplugged and has some time to sort of settle down, because you don't want the laser just firing off. Even though it is a relatively low intensity laser, there's still enough intensity in that laser to burn pits in your eyeball if it were to reflect off something. So you want to make absolutely certain that the machine is completely powered down. Give it a little while to rest. And when I'm talking about powered down, powered down and unplugged from the wall. There's one other thing here as well. Because of this constant charge and discharge, these guys generate quite a bit of ozone gas, and it accumulates inside the laser cabinet. So when I had my crews doing maintenance for the large company downtown, when they were going to do the laser maintenance first, they would be suited up like they're going to a hazmat situation. Hair bonnets, surgical gloves. I got them painters' aprons to cover their clothing. You don't want the toner and everything to get on your clothing, and you certainly don't want to be breathing it or letting it get in your eyes. So they'd be decked out. But they also, all of them carried a little 9-inch fan that they could clip onto the top of the casing. They would take the venting systems off of the case. So these were big network laser printers. And they would take that fan and blow it down into that thing to two purpose: to cool the drum and to dissipate the ozone gas that was generated just by the printing process. Another couple of things that you may have to end up replacing on this guy. Now let's go back here for a second. These transfer rollers, the image drum, the paper source pickup roller, these rollers here, and the exit rollers in the exit path. Those things are, it's a very hard rubber composite, and they wear out. So those may have to be replaced now and again. Not very often, but sometimes the charge coronas, the charge and discharge coronas, these guys here, they may have to be replaced. They'll misfire every now and then. Very seldom do you have to replace the laser. The lasers sometimes need to be calibrated and realigned, but I never had to replace one in the several years that we were doing this. But these rollers here, especially ones that pull the paper in from the paper tray, had a situation where the laser printers were sitting cattywampus on the floor. They weren't leveled up, and they were pulling paper. And when they pull it, they'd pull it in sort of sideways, and they get crammed up in the paper path. And it was sort of funny. We could not figure out what was causing it for anything. And this young lady, Cindy was her lovely name, that was one of my employees. She figured it out. And from that day forth, every time we would do maintenance on the laser printers, they would take a plumber's plumb with them and make sure the printers were sitting level on the floor. Because Cindy found that the ones that were causing that problem, they were unlevel. So the rollers on one side of the print carriage were wearing more fiercely than the ones on the other side. So it was pulling the paper in sort of cattywampus there. So I thought that was brilliant myself. So the student became the teacher there. The maintenance on these things typically is paper. Keep the paper trays loaded up, but don't overload them. I've seen people that just cram like a whole stack of paper in a tray, crack the paper or crack the tray, and then cause all kind of problems. Honer cartridges, and there's a maintenance kit that comes along with these things. It usually includes the rollers that I was talking about, and sometimes the fusing assembly. The fusing assembly is the rollers that also use pressure and heat to adhere to the image from the drum to the printed paper. And then other than that, it's usually just a maintenance, keep it clean. We always use the ESD vacuums because the errant toner, because all of this rapid movement inside there, generate a lot of electrostatic energy too, and the toner would stick to the insides of the casing. So we'd use the ESD vacuum and vacuum all that stuff out, vacuum all the components on there. You always want to make certain that these systems are not only powered down but unplugged. You don't want to use any heavy duty abrasive cleaning materials, anything, just a damp rag will pretty much do it as cleaning this stuff. Now here's your inkjet, or sometimes they call them bubble jet or desk jet printers. There's two basic technologies there. There is the Epson line of computers printers, and their OEM vendors, Epson OEM vendors. They utilize this concept called piezoelectric. It is, the inkjet printers has a little nozzle. The ink gets put into the nozzle, and then the nozzle uses some function of spewing those droplets out onto the printed page. Okay. The piezoelectric part of it actually utilizes a it's like a solenoid. The ink gets into the nozzle, and then the solenoid charges. It lets off an electrical charge, which sort of blasts the ink droplets through the nozzle onto the page. The other version of it is it's a thermal oriented thing. Rather than using the electrical charge, the piezoelectric charge, it utilizes, and these are ones they call bubble jets, by the way. It uses a heater to heat up the little bubbles of ink, and this to me is fascinating. And it forms a bubble around the heated droplet of ink, and when that bubble bursts, it blows the ink droplet out the nozzle. I swear on my hand up, that's how it works. Okay. And the ink head, and regardless of whether it's thermal or piezoelectric, either one, and all of the other vendors other than Epson utilize the thermal process. Okay. So one or the other of those will get the ink droplets a drop at a time, regardless of whatever the color mix happens to be, a drop at a time onto the printed page. Okay. Um, the nozzle, the inkjet, the ink, print head nozzle itself, and typically the carriage where all of the ink cartridges are installed. It usually sits on a singular component that travels horizontally the width of the page and blows the printed ink droplets onto that page. The components here that are replaceable, of course, is your rollers. They may wear down now and again. The nozzle itself, very seldom do you have to replace them, but you do need to keep them cleaned. All of these guys have some type of cleaning and calibration function built into the software for the printer itself. And other than that, you replace ink, you replace paper, and you're good to go. Now, I'll tell you, inkjet printers are designed to be used and used regularly. That's what my wife's looks like. That's her Canon. Uses the 6 ink cartridges there to produce, in essence, the same quality printed output that my 4 or my 2 cartridge printer does. But again, those ink cartridges, the print head, all of it typically sits on that carriage. It travels very rapidly across the page horizontally and prints a line of dots at a time. Okay? And that's how all of your inkjet, bubble jet printers actually work. Here's typically what you see with the ink cartridges themselves. The ink cartridges are pseudo intelligent. They all have these little circuitry here, and those communicate with the printer. It tells the printer, this is a new ink cartridge. This is the proper type of ink cartridge for this printer. The ink is full or it's about to go empty, that kind of thing. And again, now my HP's only has 2 rather than the 4 cartridges there. This just separates the cyan, magenta, and yellow and the black colors there. And they call the black color here, that's the K, CYMK or CMYK. The one I have, it incorporates the CM and Y into a singular cartridge. But other than that, it's pretty typical. All of them are pretty much the same there. regardless of how they mix the colors, the printers themselves also will have, some type of preferences setup function box. And this is also where you typically do the nozzle cleaning, and it basically uses whatever function they required there to clear out the nozzle. I have a same printer I have here up at my alternate location at my cabin up in the Georgia foothills, and it doesn't get used nearly as much as the one here at home. So every time I go up there, I have to go through this head cleaning and nozzle check function 2 or 3 or 4 times, because the ink cartridges themselves don't dry up internally, but whatever ink might happen to be in the nozzle will dry up and block those works. So I go through the cleaning function several times before I try to print anything on that device up there. But all of your printers have their own printing setup, your attributes and properties set page. Typically from that same setup page, I can do things like update the device driver if there's a newer one available, update firmware, things like that. This is your little small, tiny thermal printers, badge printers, what these things are. This is, if you go to a conference, they use this kind of little printer to print your "Hello, my name is Donnie" badge. Labels, things like that are printed with these guys. Some of them use a thermal mechanism that it actually reveals ink from the inside of specialized paper. And then some of them use a inkjet style of printing too. Well, I saw one, never owned one, but I used one, and it used wax ink, looked like candles. And they had four. They had the black, the cyan, the magenta, and the yellow, and they were sitting in slots on the back of the printer, and it would melt those wax, look like candles, but it would melt that ink and then use the dot or the inkjet function inside the printer to print the paper. Pretty clever. But boy, what did they get nasty. I mean, those things, had to clean those things every couple of days to keep them printing properly. The ones that we usually see along this line, and we don't hardly see them anymore, is the ones that used to be on the cash register at the grocery store. Had the big round roll of specially treated paper, and those were dot matrix. They were used, pen configurations, and heated dots would reveal the ink from inside the specialized paper. Okay. Same thing with all of these printers. Keep them clean. Do your normal maintenance on these things. These guys particularly, because they have a serrated edge usually that you use to tear off the paper. Well, that creates a lot of little tiny particles of paper that gather down inside the casing of the printer. Also, if they're using the thermal, sometimes that the thermal and the wax that it melts off of the specially coated paper, it gets gummed up on the inside. There's a little bar that it's got a heating element in it that sits down under the paper, and those get sort of gummed up. So I'll tell you the best, that's what it looks like. The best cleaning agent I found for any of our computer systems in general is a half and half mixture of 70% isopropyl alcohol and distilled water. Half and half. And I also had, when I send my employees out into the field, I talked my doctor's office into giving me a whole bundle of these long Q-tips that has the cotton only on one end. I mean, they're long; they're foot long. So those are great with that half and half isopropyl and distilled water cleaning. You don't want to use any abrasive cleaning solutions or anything like that. You want to try your best to control the amount of moisture you're using, but keep them clean, keep the dust bunnies out, and they'll, keep the maintenance up, and they'll last for a long time. This is an example of the very first printer I ever worked on. It's called a dot matrix or a tractor feed printer. Oki Data was the name of the company that produced those. And these things were heavy. I mean, you could use it as a boat anchor after it stopped printing. But these guys uses a collection of wire pins that sits in the end of the print nozzle. And there's a process like a solenoid process that forces those pins to make contact with a ribbon, an ink ribbon, and then it prints a dot on the paper, which is behind the ink ribbon. I've seen them with as few as 12 pins. I've seen them with as many as 24 pins that make up the dotted image itself. They typically will have a slot in either in the bottom side of the printer or in the back side of the printer where this continuous feed paper will, we usually just sit the box paper down on the floor behind the printer and it would feed through the slot. And the tractors is little sprockets that sit right underneath this area here. And they're controlled by this little roller right here. But the sprockets, the on that actually align with the printed punched holes in the paper itself. Any time that you require a multi-part paper print, carbon-based or carbon-less multi-part printer, this is your guy right here. Because it with one print job, it prints multiple copies. We see that, for warehouse manifest, shipping orders. I see them the auto parts store I do biz with. They got 3 of these things sitting over behind their counter, and they'll print my receipts and all that. They tear off their copy, keep it. They give me my copy, and so on. One big thing about these guys, and you can't see it in this graphic, there is typically a tray along the bottom side of the printer. And, if we could see the other side here, you'd see it. But it's a little tray that runs right underneath where the print head is. And it's also catches any of the punched holes here in this tractor feed paper that weren't completely punched out when they manufactured it. And believe me, there's a lot of them. Well, those holes, the tractor, when it's pulling the paper through, will punch those holes out. And they gather down in the bottom of the printer. Okay. And they will build up over a period of time. So the auto parts store I was telling you about, I went in there one day and I introduced myself. They were new to the neighborhood. And the guy says, "Oh, you're a computer guys." Going, "Well, sort of, kind of, yeah." He says, "Well, let me ask you." And he was telling me about that they had these 3 printers here. And he said, "We have to call up our IT guy about every couple of weeks." Said this thing it stops feeding the paper. It tears the paper. It prints the same line on it. And I says, "Well, I can tell you exactly what that is without even looking." And he says, "Can you show me?" I said, "Yes, I can." So I went around. I pulled out that tray, and it was very difficult to get it out of the printer because those punch holes had mounded up so much that they were hitting the bottom of the print mechanism. So the paper wasn't feeding properly. Okay. So I told him, I says, "Look, if you'll have somebody every couple of days empty these trays right here," I said, "I guarantee you that's what your computer dude is charging you $150 a trip to do. He's coming here, he's emptying that tray, probably vacuuming it out with his ESD vacuum." I said, "You do that a couple of times a week, and you're not going to have to call your IT guy anymore for that problem anyway." So every time, that's been 3, 4 years ago. Every time to this day, when I go in there to buy something, and it's the same manager, and he's hired a new assistant manager, but every time I go in there, he'll introduce me to one of the employees or one of his customers. "This old boy here saved me $150, keeps on going." So, but that's just a trick there as far as keeping these things functioning. And I'll tell you, if you will keep these guys cleaned out, keep that paper tray empty, the only thing you have to replace here is paper and the ribbon, the ribbon that goes in front of the print head itself. Very seldom does the print head fail, and if it does, it's very evident because one of the pins is broken. So you get a blank spot in some of the characters there that so it's not making that dot. And there's nothing you can do except replace it. But the good news is there's usually a couple of little set screws, one on top, one on the side. Undo those, take the old print head off, put the new one on, tighten them back up, and then go through the calibration process which is usually on board as part of the computer firmware itself, and you're good to go. You keep those things clean, they will last way longer than you will for in most cases there. Okay. Now, troubleshooting functions in printer devices is a very straightforward process. Um, you're going to find that, as I was saying earlier, most of the evident issues that people have with printers are self-inflicted wounds or oversights. Well, yeah, it's just not printing. Well, does the printer have paper in it? Oh, no. Okay. Well, it's not printing blue. It's printing every other color, but it's not printing blue. Well, maybe your blue ink cartridge probably needs to be replaced, that kind of thing. So don't assume anything if you are helping people troubleshoot printer problems. Okay. And again, break it down to the lowest common denominator. Is it turned on? Are the lights on the front of the printer showing glowing bright? If not, is it plugged in? And remember, two ends of that plug, into the printer and into the wall. If it is a network printer of some sort, is the network cable plugged in? Can you verify with someone that the printer is actually showing up on the network? Can you pull up your File Explorer and see that printer showing in your network devices there? And ask them, well, can you print it? Can they print a test page? Well, if they can't print a test page, see if some of the other users that are using that printer can print a test page. See if you can print a test page. So what you're trying to do is to isolate it. Is it only their problem, or is it a systematic problem? Can nobody print to that printer? Okay. So those are the kind of things that you'll want to verify when you start doing connectivity troubleshooting anyway. There are also, and a lot of times, as shown in this graphic here, the printer will tell you you got a jam in the paper path here. Okay. And even in some cases, it will tell you, open this door, open this tray. And it's because paper is crammed up or blocking, for instance, the normal paper feed path. I encountered that on some of the same systems in the large downtown company. They had, and this what blew me away. They're a paper products company. They were finding the cheapest off-brand paper products they weren't even using their own paper products, which blew me away. They were purchasing from some online cheap brander, and some of the paper that they were putting in the printers was damp. So it was feeding 5, 6, 7, 8 sheets at the time. And they just could not figure out what was causing these problems here. But same thing on computer. Pay attention, listen. If you hear some loud grinding noises, or if you hear clicks and bumps, the ink cartridges in your inkjet or your bubble jet printers, they have to be inserted and clipped down into the slots. So very carefully make sure that you're stepping through those kind of things. Pay attention to any print error messages you may get on your computer or on the console of the printer itself. Okay. And then look for things like this. You have a faded print, faint print. Well, you need some new ink, probably. Okay. Or if it's an inkjet printer, you may need to upgrade or update the toner cartridges. Same thing if you're getting one color is fine, but the other color is weak. Well, that may be that toner cartridge or that ink cartridge itself. If you get black stripes, either horizontally or vertically on a system, then that's a situation where the paper push and pull rollers, they may be dirty. You may need to clean those off. If you get just an entire page that's just printed solid black, or if you get large vertical black lines, well, that implies a software issue. So you may need to the fix on that. Maybe just update the device driver. Okay. So again, don't take anything for granted You can always verify that a printer is working properly by printing a test page. Now, these large finishing printer systems, I've encountered several of those with a couple of different organizations. And this is a full print shop in a singular appliance. I mean, it's got multiple trays for sorting and collating output. It's got a stapler or a binding mechanism built right on, hanging off the side of the printer, hole punches. So there's a whole lot of individual components there that could indeed fail. So, and some of those are very specialized components. So you have to have the ability of troubleshooting those individual, additional peripheral components that give you that full-fledged print shop finishing capability there. Sometimes you'll get the staplers. You'll have a staple misfire, a staple a break, and it gets down into the stapling mechanism itself, so it don't staple anymore. So those are things you'll just have to take a much more of a detailed, intense look at those kind of things. Now the print jobs, I talked about those earlier as well. More often than not, excuse me, there is an individual that is responsible for monitoring all of the print jobs that are being queued up in the print queue. The print queue may be resident on the printer itself. If the printer itself has memory storage capability in it, that may also be where the queue resides, and you'll need to manage it on board on the device primarily. But then you can typically hook up a controlling system that manages not only the printer, but any jobs that are queued up in that print queue as well. So you have to become familiar with the print management software, the spooler print management software. There is a background service, it's called a print spooler, that has to be started up on either the controlling computing device, the print server, as it were, or again, in the larger network-oriented printers, that controlling and spooling function may be managed on the printer device itself. So according to where that resides is where you'll address that. Okay. And the print spooler and the print queue and the print jobs, they're just like any other computer host-based job. You can start them, you can stop them, you can restart it, you can cancel it, you can delete it, and so on. So just learning what the management um, tools are that are available for that particular printer will be a good thing to do. Almost all, especially the larger network printers, almost all of those manufacturers now are including some really good, in my opinion, really good online training modules that will train you every aspect that you need to know about the setup of the printer, the support of the printer, the management of all the printer functions. Okay. So just like I was telling my darling granddaughter said earlier, we did instructions, pay attention to the instructions there and utilize all of those available training pieces there for the individual printers there. I talked about the solid black lines there being more than likely an issue with a device driver. Same thing with if you get a printed page and it's just garbledy-goop, doesn't make any sense. That is more than likely either a damaged print file in transit for some reason. When whatever computer was generating that file and encoding it with the PDL and sending it to the printer queue, it got corrupted, garbled somehow. Or that also may be an example of a need to update a print driver. Now understand, a print driver is just a file. That's all it is. And files on any computer system can become damaged by a host of things. Power surges, power sags, lightning strikes, people kicking the plug out of the wall on a computer and it just crashes. So the device drivers are something that need to be looked at and oftentimes updated on a regular basis there as well. Okay. All righty, folks. Bear in mind that in many, many cases, the print job themselves or the issues that people have with the print jobs are oftentimes self-inflicted wounds. So bear that in mind when you're doing your troubleshooting on specifically supporting printer issues. Okay. And any and all capability you get as far as training materials